everyone. Welcome to our exciting online event on navigating modern data strategy on AWS. Innovate, scale, and succeed. And with our esteemed speaker, Sanchit Jain, a data analytics and cloud practice lead at Quantify. And today we embark on a journey through the dynamic landscape of data strategy on Amazon Web Server. And I hope you will enjoy the session. So moving to who we are and what we stand for. So we are multi-cloud for you. We have a community of more than 100,000 strong technologists from all over the globe. We specialized in multi-cloud strategies, data science, artificial intelligence, blockchain, and extreme engineering. And additionally, we also assist technologists in sharing their learning and accessing opportunity through our partners platform, which is www.fifthia.com. So now I would like to give a short intro about how our company is growing. So we have conducted more than 1,000 plus sessions till now, and we have more than 300 plus speakers and more than 29,000 members associated with our platform. These are few of our master mentors who are associated with our platform. And these are few of our relationship partners who are Bata, Piper, Alibaba Cloud, Zera, Utex Lab, Prelio, Dell, Microsoft, Multiverse, Persistent, Philips, Tiger Analytics, and many more. So we are also an academic partner with Alibaba Cloud, and these are the few certificates which we have done in line with Alibaba Cloud. And you can go through all the courses from our platform, which is www.fifthia.com. And you can also get the certificate directly from Alibaba Cloud. So how do we help? So we can help you to build your knowledge, digital presence, and assist you during odd hours when you are looking for jobs through our community. And Multi-Cloud for You is a global data consulting and digital business transformation firm ranked by CIO Tech Outlook among the top 10 digital business transformations consulting startup in India. And you can get all of these with a single link, www.fifthia.com. So now a part of our community, we will provide a certificate to all the registered participants, and the certificate will be issued from our side within 1 week. And so I request all the attendees who have not registered for the event, please register for the event through the given link, which is www.fifthia.com. This is the sample certificate which you will get for attending this event. So now coming to the speaker of the day. So who is Sanchit Jain? He's a data analytics and cloud practice lead at Quantify. As speaker on AWS and a certified AWS cloud expert, he also leads the AWS user group in Mumbai. And his domain expertise is in consist of DevOps, AWS cloud, data lake, security, serverless technologies. From more information about Sanchit Jain, you can go through his social media link, which is given here. Now over to Sanchit. Welcome, Sanchit. Welcome to our platform.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you for that warm introduction.
Thank you, Sanchit.
And good afternoon to all of my wonderful audience. Thank you so much joining on Saturday afternoon, just doing in the long weekend. Absolutely, it's not making sense, but thank you so much to see that. That excites me that you guys are all interested to understand what exactly and how we'll be doing around it. So wouldn't take much time, and let me go ahead and share my screen. And again, please feel free. Let's make this an interactive session. Please feel free in case if you have any questions, any thought process. Let's make this interactive so we can get the best of what the time we have for an hour here. I hope my screen is visible to everyone, right?
Yes, your screen is visible.
Awesome. Cool. So reinvent your business with a AWS modern data strategy, or scale or innovate your business with modern data strategy. Let's exactly understand our agenda first, and then we'll deep dive what exactly has changed, why everywhere you see a modern data as a constant term. And I'll also try to share some of the glimpse of with this new buzz in the industry from last roughly a year and a half about generative AI, how that resonance, or would that see any change with modern data strategy, or it still remains the same, and how exactly the industry moving around. So with that, let me quickly give you a rundown of what the agenda is going to look like, and then we'll move forward from there. So we'll start with the voice of our customers, what exactly it looks like around, what exactly the customer sees in the market, or what in short the industry trends looks like. The AWS modern data strategy, the entire portfolio of how AWS provides, some of the details around the customer success stories and data mesh pattern we'll talk about, and the Q&A. So what exactly in the industry perspective, what I've seen, I think as in the introduction also I've mentioned, I've been driving the data analytics practice for Quantify. And as a part of my role, it's broadly to work with different CXOs, the architects and the industry experts, right? That's what my job is. Like my major job is to talk to them, understand their problems, help them to solution their problem. So this is my perspective, my own personal opinion, what I have gathered from working with different customers. Like if I see like 7 years, 8 years, or 10 years back, a decade back, the decision making, it was not that something as new come up out of the way. The decision making using data driven strategy was there. The term data driven strategy was not been very renowned, but people used to still use the data driven strategies. That was being done with some sort of an, you have old warehouse systems which was based out of SQL servers, oracles, you have different kinds of data, some of the transaction data, and that's where you used to store in all of this data as OLTP, lines of business, ERP, CRM data into your enterprise warehouse, which I mentioned, Oracle, SQL Server, and then used to do different visual business intelligence, which was Yellowfin, Tableau, the different kinds of Spotfire, and those kinds of different kinds of enterprise business intelligence you were leveraging based on the size and the scale of the organizations. This was a trend which I still see in many of the customers, specifically a specific segment of industry which I've seen, like insurance, retail. Still, they follow the similar kind of trends which are not on the cloud or not have adopted the modern era technology, which is working fine for them. I mean, I don't see there is a harm in it. Okay, but there are certain challenges that also what I have seen, which is what very important, right? And that is where exactly the birth of data driven strategy also have come around. Like data no longer fits into it. Like as I mentioned, there's nothing wrong of using the previous architecture which I gave in the slide. It still is valid based on the size and the scale of your business. Now, previously, and what have changed in recent years is people previously were leveraging more leveraging the data for making the decisions which is more in-house. For example, market basket analysis and those kinds of stuff. If you have a Coke, then maybe you need to give a ice, or maybe you have a butter, you have a bread, then you need to provide butter and sausage. Those kinds of correlation, what they were doing. Now they want to monetize this data also. Monetize in the form of, oh, if you have a bread, what is a competitive analysis price of that bread could be given in the area? Do I need to sell it in like 20 rupees looking at the area, or do I need to sell it in 100 rupees looking at the locality of the area? That is in additional edge is where people started more democratize and monetize of that data. So that's where people have started gathering more and more amount of data, which no longer fits into your system. And there is a survey which is there by from IDC Data Age 2025 that every organization, whether you are a startup, mid-scale, or an enterprise, the proportion and the percentage may vary, but if you are in any scale of an organization, your data grows 10x every 5 years. And then, I mean, this is again at the lower end. You acquire the organization, the mergers, which are very common trends in the market nowadays. So your data grows every 10x every 5 years, right? Your data platform lives up to 15 years and scales every 1000x time, right? Now, the system which May used to build, and I mean, I many people out here, if you are already been talking to your customers or been having some form of correlation working with customers directly, maybe banking and all, you would see those systems are already there from 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. I was surprised from one of the customer which I was discussing, they have this legacy system running for 30 years. And I was immense, like, okay, 30 years you have your system running, right? Now of the days, the modern technology, max if you can run for 10, 15 years is good for you, because the technology evolves, your business evolves, and your requirement and compliance also evolves, which leads to the change. So at max, you can think of 15 years when you're designing around it. So think of that you're just designing a platform which is going to run for 15 years, right? So, and every 3 5 years, the data is going to exponentially increase by 10x. So data no longer fits into the system. Accessibility, right? As I talk about previously, what people were doing versus what how industry is doing now. In order to democratize and modernize your data, you need to open up that data to different personas, like data scientist. Previously, there was a common term called as data analyst. Everything like data scientist, your analyst gets into your one part of it, which is data analyst. So even though if you're doing a research, if you're doing your data or you're doing anything, everything get consolidated in that one umbrella called as data analyst. Now that personas have broken down into multiple forms. You have data scientist, you also have machine learning engineers, you still have data analysts, research analysts, business users, BI users, data engineers, and different personas, right? Now, for simple thing, how your application, maybe your web application is performing. For that, also we do some sort of a performance tracking. That also generates the logs, right? And those logs also get stored into your database. And we do Google Analytics on top of it to identify how many users have hit your websites, how many added into the cart, what they were doing around it, those kinds of web trafficking, right? So there are different kinds of accessibility and different kinds of data that get generated. And you use different platform for it, like machine learning you talk about, data query workbench you talk about, some research analytics, advanced analytics, streaming, so on, so hence so on and so forth, right? There are different ways you consume that data. So it's not limited to only the analyst. Now there are multiple personas who wants to leverage multiple different forms of data. Nevertheless, as you start talking about more exposing your data, there comes your blessings of compliances, right? That there are compliances, there are certain rules, regulations which are getting stricter, tighter day by day, which is good for us. I'm not criticizing them. I am in favor of applying the regulatory kinds of compliances, but that puts a more of pressure on you, that what kind of data you need to open. You cannot open your entire data. If you have a kind of a table which is of 10 columns, 100 rows, you cannot open all the 10 columns to every one of them, right? You're going to segment or segregate that based on the roles and responsibility. So that's a fair thing, but that comes also part of the compliance. So now you don't only need a system which is a scalable, performance wise, cost wise minimal, but even handle your compliances or governance. So that's where exactly what I have seen is people are looking around a strategy, a single glass strategy, which is helping them to solve this basic thing. Absolutely, a single strategy is not going to solve all the business problems, but a single strategy and a framework that helps to achieve all of these things what we talk about: scalability, performance, democratization, compliances. And that's where you would have seen a lot of buzz in last 4 years talking about modern data strategy. So modern data strategy, right? So there is nothing as new that has come off the plate, right? Oh wow, there has come some new AI ML based. Absolutely not. The data strategy what we were leveraging a decade back has been, you can think of that, has been revamped as the new era, and that new era is called as modern data strategy. And that is to cater the need of the industry to do democratization, monetization, and different forms of compliances. So to achieve all of these three, people have start leveraging a modern data strategy to achieve all of these things. And even if someone is coming from a different old system of SSIS, SSRS kind of stuff, if you see this architecture also, there used to be a data source, there are some sort of a consumption, and there used to be a simple ETL. So even if you correlate this architecture with your previous architecture, you'll still see a correlation heavily that okay, it's working still the same. The only thing that has changed, as I mentioned, the democratization, the entire modernization or monetization of the data, and the compliance has brought up this kind of a more of cataloging, governance, data lake, analytics, and all those different kinds of technology at the center of your business, so you can leverage this data more often rather than just storing this data and doing more of reactive based approach. You shift that paradigm towards left and be more proactive based approach. Before we deep dive into any of these pillars and understand a bit more how exactly AWS helps, what are the different services, why so, how this correlate with GenAI, any questions in general which I can help you to answer with, please put it in the chat. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer that. Okay, I take it as no. We'll move ahead. So now, what are the pillars, right? As I mentioned, three heavy terms: governance, monetization, and democratization. But what are the actual pillar which help you to run this modern data strategies, right? If you want to apply this modern data strategy in your organization, what are the things you need to take care of? So first is a scalable data lake. Absolutely. Unified data governance and security. More of serverless approach. Performance and built-in machine learning, which is what we studied, right? It needs to scale as per your requirement. It should provide security after the box. It should be easily implementable. It should give you the performance, and it should have the built-in machine learning, so you can solve more of your business problem rather than more of the basic constructor foundation part of it. And that's what we'll deep dive in throughout the session today. So you understand what are the different services, why are those services, and how you can correlate those services to actually achieve the modern data strategy. So first we are going to start with the scalable data lake. So in case of scalable data lake, right, we all know, even if you would have been knowing AWS, a bits of it, right, bits of like even the foundation of it, everyone would be knowing a famous service of AWS, which is Amazon S3, right? Amazon S3 is the centralized storage service which is highly scalable, cost effective, and you are leveraging Amazon S3 in some form, some shape in all of your services. So whichever service of AWS you are leveraging, whenever you talk about as an object-based store within it, maybe you're using some machine learning services which are API driven, like extract, recognitions, or maybe SageMaker, or maybe as simple as your entire code commit and all those DevOps stack, right? Or your cloud formation. Whichever service you're leveraging it, they are backed by Amazon S3. If Amazon S3 goes down, I can give you in return all of your servers are going to be impacted of that particular region. So that's how AWS themselves are so highly reliant on Amazon S3. And that's what exactly is the thumb rule of your data lakes. If you're designing your data lake and that is not based off Amazon S3, you're designing on AWS and native, and if you're not leveraging S3, then there's a fundamentally wrong what you're doing on step one itself. Amazon S3 is highly scalable, significantly cost effective service which everyone should leverage in some form, some shape when they are designing the data lake. Maybe leverage it as an archival storage or for cold data store, but you should leverage S3. And S3 provides different other features. As you can see here, not only the integration with all the AWS services which are provided from a data lake perspective, it also provides different features like versioning, per life cycle for truncate, and other security features which can make you S3 can only accessible within the VPC. So those are the additional securities and integrations and cost protection, right? The cost and performance. Those are the other features which S3 provides, makes it more favorable and most loving services when it comes to by any organization when you are using S3. And whatever you do, you talk to any of your organizations or any of your friends who are doing machine learning, they might be leveraging SageMaker, they might be leveraging maybe some other services, but S3 would be their primary source of the data. And on top of the, when you're using the S3, please make sure that, as I mentioned, S3 is more of the object based things, so please partition your data and store it in a compressed format like Parquet and other forms. but leverage S3 as your backbone of your data lake, like some sample architecture, what you see. S3 is the backbone, and whatever the data maybe is your source, where you have this on-premise data, any sort of a streaming data, social media feeds, or any sorts of a file, everything gets stored into your Amazon S3 bucket. And from there, you can leverage Athena, Glue, Redshift, SageMaker, EMR, those kinds of other services to consume that data. So please make sure that you leverage Amazon S3 in any form, any shape, what you're using it. The second is a unified data access, security, and governance. Now, this becomes very important, as I mentioned. A simple example, if you have a column, 10 column table and 100 rows, you cannot open the entire metrics, the entire relation to any other people, right? Based on the roles, you may open that, okay, hey, out of this 10 columns, the data engineer should only have an access to 7 of it. Maybe an analyst should have 5 of it. Maybe finance team should have all 10 of it. So based on the roles, you're going to open the access, which is also called as role-based access control. So RBAC is generally what we refer to as. So based on that, the same apply on the data lake or the modern data strategies. And it's not just limited to RBAC. It is also includes encryption, redaction of the data, which is also called as masking of the data, and different forms of governance. So that's where exactly you will see a service called as Amazon or AWS Lake Formation. This service exists from last 2.5, 3 years, 2.5 precisely, I would say 2.5, 3 years as the service exists in AWS, and that's significantly evolved over time and time. I mean, as you talk about the service when it was launched versus as of today, the significant improvement in the service in terms of the features and functionality, as well as the integrations what this service provide. So as you can see, with a single glass of this entire lake formation, you can control your access control, your catalog, which stores the metadata on sitting on S3, and this can be also been integrated or extended to Athena, QuickSight, Redshift, SageMaker, and EMR. So the permission which you are defining on Amazon Lake Formation, which is also called as an ALF, AWS Lake Formation, it is not just limited to the S3 bucket. You can also extend this to other services which are going to consume. So that it becomes more interesting, right? Let's say I store my data into S3 and now I want to fire an Athena. So in a simple language, I have to configure it on S3, I have to configure to Athena, then I have to configure to QuickSights and other things, right? Now with lake formation, it simplify this, that you apply this lake formation to only at one place and extend this to your left or as well as to the right side. So that makes it more at the central driving seat rather than on the left and the right hand side based on what are you doing and how. So that makes us more interesting service. As well as there is one more service which has come up, which is not relevant to more of the governance, more not related to the security aspect, but more on the governance side of it. Governance is who should have what kind of access, is the data zone, which is also integrated very well with lake formation. So lake formation plus data zone gives you a unified data governance layer, which allows you not only to keep a track of who should have what kind of an access, but as well as a centralized security framework on your data lake. Next come is the entire purpose built performance and the cost, right? This is the very important thing, and a lot of things have changed, I would say, the last year reinvent. And that's here exactly where we are going to talk about a lot of generative AI perspective, right? So this is the entire service what you see the catalog. So this is the entire services which are highlighted in green is more from an analytics perspective. So if you're doing analytics, let's say for you're doing on a scale, right? Like warehouse where you need a petabytes kind of a solution, EMR where you want to do more of Hadoop plus Spark workload, Athena which is more of a serverless ad hoc queries on S3, Open Search or Kinesis analytics, data analytics, right? Which is also now referred to as Kinesis Manage Flink. If you want to do any of those kinds of analytics, you have this portfolio. For data lakes, we just studied, right? S3, lake formation, and glacier, which form your core construct of your data lake. And then there is an important thing which you will see on the databases, right? Most of the AWS services, as I mentioned, till last year, before the reinvent, were working more as a purpose-built database services. At the reinvent, they have upgraded all of the databases with the new trend in the market to be also compatible with vector databases. So more of the services like we talk about Aurora, Neptune, they started supporting more of the vector-based approach. And the big idea here to support vector-based, as we all know, is to support the entire generative AI application. So if you want to do a generative application, generative AI applications, whatever in some form, right? Whatever the business use case you want to solve, this entire database, the analytics and the data lake is now capable enough to give you that perspective of it. And that's where people more leverages the mistake, which also we will see what exactly the mistake they do, right? But that's how AWS makes you ready for to be a generative enabled or generative readiness kind of a thing by leveraging data lakes, which allows you to leverage S3, the right governance posture, and right cataloging and metadata, which will be required for the governance, the entire analytics at the scale, so you can process the data and organize that data, the different databases to be enabled for storing your entire vectors and other stuff which is required for generative, and also the entire kind of a GenAI services here like Bedrock and Amazon Q, which will allow you to integrate with this entire stack here. And on top of it, you have this entire business and traditional machine learning services like QuickSight, Data Exchange, SageMaker, and other services. This is what I was talking about, right? Now, whatever we have studied so far is more talking about your data already is on the AWS. But what if you want to migrate your data from an existing maybe a database or a SaaS application or on-prem. So that's where you see a seamless data integration from any of these approaches via connectors, glue catalog, and glue. So that's where you see a role of coming around. Like absolutely, you can do your Spark workload on Hadoop, right, with EMR. But if you want to leverage more of connector base, in case of EMR also they provide Spark, but you have to write a lot of coding there. But in case if you are more into some connector base, that connectors are readily available by AWS and you want to code less, more focus on your business, then Glue ETL that comes into it, which is where the serverless ETL, purpose driven ETL comes into the place, and you leverage a lot of connectors provided by Glue out of the box as well as third party via AWS marketplace. You can integrate that and you can solve or ingest the data into S3 bucket and integrate the services without writing your own heavy custom code. And the reasons are same. Absolutely, you can build your own connectors within your organization or you can purchase or buy, right? The whole idea of leveraging the out of the shelf kind of connector is more focused on not to build and fill the lake, but more of consume the lake. Consume is solving more of the business process rather than actually pumping the data out from on-prem or other system and uploading or putting it on the S3 bucket. So that's where comes a seamless data integration. The important piece which we all are fascinated a lot in last 6 to 8 months is the entire machine learning or generative AI. And as I talk about in the previous slide also, whichever services you talk about of AWS, whether it's a databases, whether it's a data warehouse, data lake, or whether you have a business intelligence, all of this entire services, all of this are some form, some shape integrated with either the machine learning or the GenAI technology. If you talk about the databases, we just studied in the previous slide that databases are now supporting the vector, that they can store the vector, which itself become more friendly for them to be compatible with the generative AI applications. Data warehouse, whether you talk about Redshift integrates with the entire generative AI as well as it integrates with the entire security layer like ALF, lake formation, or data zone. And Redshift itself also has an ML services out of the box, which can help you to identify forecasting, fraud detection, those kinds of services, what you can do from using Redshift ML. Then you have the entire business intelligence tool. We all know Amazon has a service called as Amazon QuickSight, which is a managed BI. And this managed BI also been integrated with Amazon Q, or generative AI based approach, to design the dashboard on the fly, leveraging simple native language. So that's where you take any of these AWS services, whether it's a database, data warehouse plus data lake, or BI tool, it leverages traditional machine learning or generative AI in some form, some shape. I'll take a pause here. Any questions do you guys have before we move ahead and talk about the case study?
Participants, do you have any question?
You can put it in the chat in case if you are unable to talk or if the mic is disabled, you can put it in the chat. Okay, no worries. Let me continue with this. So I'll move ahead with the case study and the reference architecture, which is something very interesting, and we'll spend a lot of time here to understand this. So this is one of the architecture which I have designed, one of the case study which I have worked around, which is called as connected vehicle platform. The problem with this entire thing, and this was designed somewhere in 2019 where we were working with a customer, right? The challenges was rudimentary system, no real-time analytics, lack of dynamic scaling, and difficult to troubleshooting. So just to give you an idea, this is a customer which works on a lot of telematics data. They leverage the telematics data, the IoT sensor data, process that data, and understand what are the different trends which can help to optimize their business, as well as leverage that data to more even provide as a services. Services such as how many signals are broken by the drivers, how many speeding events have been done by the drivers, whether the drivers are just keeping the engine on in the basement and they are not even driving the vehicle. Those kinds of mispractices, malpractices, what drivers were doing, this customer was want to identify those gaps, and they already have this sensor been installed in all the fleets or the vehicle, which then they can consume the data and can do it, but they don't have the system to take care of that. The solution is, that's where we came as a quantify, and the solution was is to build a scalable and secure platform, enhancing syncing capability, serverless ingestion, and single click deployment. So that's exactly what I talk about, right? We leverage a lot of serverless services, enhance syncing capability, which allows them to acquire the data at the scale and as well as process that data. So once you acquire the data, once you process it, then the only thing which is left is store that data and democratize that data. So that's what we were able to prove this out. And this entire thing, what I'm talking about, which is your S3 bucket, the permissions, the serverless, which is glue, the data zone, everything was done with a cloud formation, which is single click deployment. And the impact, what the impact the customer got by implementing this, right? 50% in the reduction cost. The reduction which was going for the inventory management and the visibility from all the different sites on the top level was very limited. After a platform, there was a straight incremental of 50% in that. 70% reduction in the downtime because we were leveraging like things like cloud formation and other good services. Facilitated real-time analytics with help of this entire scale platform. Generated design in deeper insights for the workflow. So basically, you This is exactly where you see the Amazon Q thing, right? That now the generated deeper insights for the workflow is you have a workflow which dump the data to S3 bucket, and from there you have different services like Amazon Q, workflow, pick up this entire data. So that's exactly what you have. And the last is the entire flexible and modular pattern, which is what we understood in the modern data strategy, those five pillars. So the entire case study, what we have done is not only modern data eligible and compliant, but also leveraging the cost and the flexibility and modular approach, which makes it more innovative. It may be sounding that, okay, we are talking about very simple case study, but actually, if you sit on the ground and look into this, it was very complicated. Any questions here?
Participants, you can also put the questions in the chat box. Sanchit, there is a question in the chat box.
Okay. What are the best practices should organization use to create value using data? What best practices should organization use to create values using data? Okay. So very loaded question, I would say. On terms of the best practices, right? It all depends on what is your end goal, right? I always believe on moving backward philosophy, right? Like you move backward when you're designing it. So I'll try to answer it not directly in an indirect fashion to your question. What are the use cases you're trying to solve? So you need to list down the entire workflow first, right? What we you call as a workflow or a lineage, that you first identify what is an use case. Are you trying to identify your customer analytics? Are you trying to identify more as a performance? Are you trying to more doing some sort of an financial compliances, those kinds of things? So first, what is a use case you want to identify? That's one. Two, then you identify who are the different personas who are going to use this platform, work on the data, or will be running this platform in and out. So identify those sample audience thing, right? Those two. Third, identify what is your different data sources which you're going to put into your data lake. Fourth, based on the data sources, identify are you leveraging any sorts of your security thing, right? What is your compliance and security practice will look like given there? Because you end of the day, if you're storing, let's say, even a small subset, but it is of healthcare, then PHI applied into it. If you're storing any personal information, then PII data applied to it. So you need to identify what data source type you are leveraging so you can apply the right compliance norms to it. So those are the three things I would say. And the fourth thing is absolutely design the architectures which is scalable, cost effective, and not try to over engineer or overshoot it by achieving too many things. I always suggest to my folks also, and even I do one philosophy, right? One secret sauce is keep your architecture more agile in nature. You should be not design the architecture in one go, but technically you should be able to evolve your architecture incrementally, which is more agile in nature. So if you follow these steps, I'm pretty sure you will have the best practices, which is more your organization will be helpful of using the modern data or value using the data. I hope I answer your question. Okay, awesome. Are there any other questions? Please put it in the chat. Okay, got it. So next is the architecture, right? What I've studied as a case study. Here comes the architecture diagram. Absolutely, I'm going to fill in all the colors, all the icons and other stuff. But this is my framework looks like. This is exactly my on-premise connectivity was there. The entire data acquisition or collection framework, consumption, pre-processing, data storage, summary generation, and real-time analytics. So the use case of this customer was is acquire my data, store it in a meaningful fashion, and then monetize their data by generating real-time insights. The insights which I just mentioned to you. So first what we did is we started acquiring the data using the API of this particular IoT device and store this data into this entire pre-processing box, which is meant for Firehose, Lambda, Glue, OpenStreetMap, and send that enriched data to the data store. The data store was also S3, DynamoDB, and the entire Athena and the Redshift. All the services what we have seen in the analytics slide. Then there was a real-time analytics, as well as the analytics is like more of, let's say, if you want to show the performance of your website. You cannot show the performance. I mean, absolutely, you can do it, but you cannot show the performance like after 24 hours to 48 hours. You need it real time, maybe every 30 minutes, every hour. So that is this mechanism. This is a summary generation. As the name suggests, summary of the entire day. So this used to do the summary generation. The entire consumption standpoint, if you want to expose your data as an API for other integration, you can do the same. And here comes the DevOps stack, which is the CloudWatch and the Jenkins. So this is how the entire architecture was looking like when it comes to the connected vehicle platform. Do you guys have any questions in general on this? Please put your questions in the chat if you have any. Where we analyze the outcome. Could you elaborate this question a bit more, Hemant? Okay, so if you see here, right, in this architecture also, if you see there is a quick site, there is this API, there is this quick site, plus there is in this entire data storage, right? That's how you can do a couple of things, right? Things such as you can use quick site for creating the visualizations. You can leverage this Lambda and API gateway with help of data API. You can fire the API and make this as a hub model. With help of this entire Redshift, you can try to do more of machine learning and more of a warehouse designing up to petabyte scale. So those are the different things what you can leverage to consume. Out of it, there are even third-party tools also available where people are leveraging around it, like Power BI is there, or SSIS is there, or even Talent is there. People are leveraging those kinds of tools and technology also. I won't say there is a right or wrong that this needs to be used versus this that. It's based on your business use case, the change management that may be brought up, and how exactly are you targeting those. So based on those things, you should leverage either the third party or the cloud. But this is the answer. Does I able to answer your question, Hemant? So that's, I think I'm here on the most of on the last slide. So I just want to ask a couple of questions, right, to you guys to see if how exactly you guys are designing a modern data strategy. What is how it looks like for you guys? What are you trying to do with your data and other stuff? Any more questions? And again, one of the thing I missed out to share also, right? Most of the organizations are currently being more looking forward towards a generative AI enabled. Let me be very honest. Yes, generative AI is the new talk of the town. Everyone is looking around generative AI, right? But we need to be more careful about generative AI is that you need to first understand your data. The same issues what we would have faced, would we have faced like 6 7 years back when the machine learning got into it, right? Or fraud detection, those kinds of different things, or predictive maintenance or analytics. What you do is you first store your data in a very cost effective storage. That's why you do more of an EDA, right? Exploratory data analysis to identify your data. You slice dice the data, understand, try to figure out some patterns, and that patterns goes as a inputs to your machine learning model. The generative AI also the workflow more or less remains the same. The first thing is where you have to ingest your data, clean the data, put a security or governance around it, and then expose that data for the consumption, which is via Bedrock, via some other third party machine learning or generative AI models, or maybe with the entire Amazon queue. If you start exposing this raw data as is to the generative AI, it may work. I don't say it will not. It may work, but again, the possibility for getting you the wrong results is going to be higher than it's going to be the accuracy part of it. So please make sure that data is or the data platforms are not going anywhere out of the business. People are fascinated about the entire generative AI, which I completely agree. But the data will still remain the driving seat for any sort of a consumption, whether it's a generative AI, whether it's a BI, whether it's a traditional machine learning, or whether it's any other applications. So that's, I would say, pretty much about from my end. If you guys want to connect with me on the LinkedIn, here is my code. You can scan this and we can chat on the LinkedIn if you have any questions. And if you, I would say, if you have other questions also, please put it here in the chat. I'm happy to answer them in terms of tools or any other thing. I'll be happy to answer all of your questions.
Sanjit, I have a question. So traditionally, we are discussing about a lot of data related projects, am I right? So data engineering, these things. So it is a generic question. So is it like there are a lot of data projects which are being dealt by the enterprises in India? I'm asking, not in US. Most of the projects are they started using AWS data topics like Athena, QuickSight, Redshift. Even though Redshift is having competition from Snowflake, so how far is the future for this actually? Is it picking up or it's already there in the momentum? So since you are from more into data part actually and you are more into industry, you can explain us.
Absolutely. That's a very good question. And thanks for checking that question out. Uh, So see, basically, when it comes to tool A versus tool B, right? Athena or Redshift versus tool A, I would not get into that tool comparison, right? But as I said at the beginning also, you need to understand what and how are you, what are you trying to solve, right? That's what moving backward. First is whichever tool what you leverage, whether it's a cloud native tool, whether maybe let's say Informatica sitting on AWS, whether maybe it's Snowflake or maybe it's Databricks or maybe even SSRS running on AWS. Okay. The whole thing is what is your purpose? What is your end goal you want to achieve without first getting into the tools? I mean, I've seen most of the customers, most of the people making the common mistake is first jump on the tools. Absolutely not. First identify what is your business use case. Are you trying to do more of your customer analytics? Are you more trying to do a predictive analytics? Are you trying to do more of a churn, segmentation? What are you trying to do here, right? So first is that the question. Then you identify, okay, in order to do this kind of a business problem solving, what is a different data set I need? And at what frequency, what scale are you talking about? Are you talking about once in a day? Are you talking about every 6 hours? Are you talking about every 1 hour? Are you talking about real time? Or are you talking about near real time? That comes as a frequency and the scale. Then, based on this requirement, The third, fourth question will come is around the personas and the compliances, the governance requirement, which is very important, which always sits at the last, but I would put it into fourth in my list. And then the fifth comes is the entire tools and technology. Now, if you tell me that, okay, hey, I cannot allow my data to move outside my AWS account. It has to be completely locked down within the VPC, within the private network, within my AWS environment. That kills the most of your options out of it. That will throw all of your tools, most of it out of it, and you might have to run something which is locked down within your EC2 instance running on that one, or maybe managed services. So I would say this is how you need to first define that workflow or the requirement document. I mean, the technical documentation, requirement documentation, or business requirement documentation. And that's where you need to see around. Now, coming to the second question of which tool will succeed versus which tool not. I am a fan of always been a cloud native. I'm not saying that other tool may not or this tool will. I'll always a fan of cloud native. Again, services like EMR you talk about or other services. The reason is there is a constant innovation that happens at both the sides, and it becomes easy to swipe in, swipe out with the pay as you go model. Like the reason of cloud native of my preferences is the pay as you go model, which any cloud provider provides, and swipe in, swipe out behavior that you can swipe in, you can swipe out with the pay as you go model. So that is why I love to leverage cloud native. But as I mentioned, it's very subjective based on the use cases what I'm going to solve. Now, in certain use cases, there are certain complicated data structure, data type, which is not available by cloud native, or there are some connectors of like some traditional legacy system, legacy box, which is not even enabled, and I have to write the custom code. Absolutely, I would say no. Let me see some other third party marketplace or other solutions which can help me to solve that. So that's what I would say. Given the strategy, given where you are, you need to pick and choose what is working out well for you.
Thanks, Sanjit. Thanks for the explanation. Thank you.
Awesome.
So participants, you can also ask the question in the chat box, or you can connect with Sanchit by that link, social media link. So on the behalf of Multi-Cloud for You, I would like to thank Sanchit for delivering such an informative session, and thank you all the participants for joining the event. Thank you all.